Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to hopefully try and keep this video brief because the last video that I did was over 40 minutes and it was a bit of a pain uploading it. Just a moment, checking on my dogs, scratching around. So for this video I'm going to talk about the trappings of love. This is a complex and probably a good few hours long video really, but I'm going to try my best to try and keep it as brief as I can. I think, look, we're all on a journey of learning, exploration, making mistakes, and that's been, that process has been ongoing since I was a kid. In terms of love, of course, what we perceive as love changes over the years, as we mature and become adults. Or even just from the transition from being a kid to a teenager, then a teenager to a young adult, and then a young adult to a middle-aged adult, and so forth and so on. I think for me, I knew that I liked, I knew that I was interested in the opposite sex from the age of about, probably like 5 or 6 years old. When I was 5 or 6, I just remember that I just became aware of the fact that I liked girls, and that was that. Like, and I knew that I didn't like boys. Like in that regard, I wasn't. I don't mean in the sense of being like attracted to females at that point. I just remember that I just remember liking girls. Like, as in, I don't know. It's hard to describe what it was, but I just knew that. I guess sort of. I didn't have the words for it at the time, but I guess like I couldn't express myself. But I knew deep in myself that I was heterosexual, essentially. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. Without really, it's very difficult to explain how I knew that, but I just did for some reason. It wasn't like, obviously at that age, it wasn't a sexual thing. It was just like, it was. I guess I just found girls attractive, right? Okay, and then but really it wasn't until I was sort of like heading towards my teenage years when I started to become actually physically, like, became more aware of the fact that I was physically attracted to the opposite sex, females. And the reason I'm saying all this is because it's relevant. I really firstly kind of became interested in girls in terms of their looks and things. I think first of all, I think when I was like really young, I think I was interested in girls, like the way that they talked, like just the way the behaviour was and things like that. But it wasn't really until I was sort of probably about 8 or 9 or something, like, I'm guessing sort of 8, 9, 10-ish or something, when I started to become like actually like physically attracted to females. Obviously, facially, in terms of like the faces, I mean, and the way that the hair looked and things. Just obviously, they're just obvious differences between what used to be obvious differences, not so much anymore, between boys and girls. And girls were still looked quite feminine back then in the 90s and 2000s. I'm sorry if I haven't got a bit of water on me. I just got out of the shower, so I do apologise for that. Yes, I am an oversharer. I'm not going to apologise for it, but that's just the way I am. But yeah, I was interested really in females. I knew that my sexual orientation was heterosexual from a young age. It's just been that's just always been a solid part of myself. Like, I've just always been interested in females, always. I mean, I went through a weird phase when I was in my early to mid-teens where I was kind of like thinking to myself, am I bisexual? I don't really want to go into that too much, but because it's a bit embarrassing. I don't want to, I want to embarrass myself and give too many details away. Yeah, not everyone needs to know everything about me. But what I'm trying to say is that I was attracted to the opposite sex from a young age. I knew that I was. Certainly by the time I was 7 or 8 years old, I knew that I was attracted to females. And by the time I got into my teens, that was like, there was no questions about that. It was guaranteed. It was a definite thing. And I've really started to become, and this video is supposed to be about love, and I'm trying to get towards it. Let's see if I can kind of keep this video to about 25, 30 minutes at the most, if I can. I think really my perceptions of love, really, probably for most people, stem from, the bond that you have with your mother, I guess, really, or with your father as well. But I think probably more so with your mother, because it tends to be, for the most part, that your mother's the one that, you're a part of your mother's body, for God's sake, for 9 months, and then your mother, generally speaking, is the one that takes care of you in many regards. Takes care of your basic needs. Whereas your father is, I think really your father is someone that guides you and teaches you. Of course, he takes care of you as well. But I think mothers tend to be a lot better at the developing, your sort of empathy and things like that. Trying to teach you about, trying to be kind and perhaps like, sort of like a more kind of, I guess, the sort of the softer part of yourself, the feminine side of you, obviously, and that comes out later on in you don't realise it at the time, but that influence shapes you as you get older. I don't think you see it as much when you're young, but I think as you get into once you get to adulthood, you start seeing those masculine, feminine kind of, traits showing up in weird places, and you don't realise how much influence your parents really truly have on you until you get older, I don't think. I think it's only really when you get into your 20s, and certainly when you get into your 30s, you start to see a lot of things. You think, wow, my father really did influence me. Like my mother really did shape me in certain ways, and perhaps, speaking of love, in many ways, I think the relationships that you have with your parents tend to shape in certain regards the relationships that you're going to have, and the types of people that you attract, and certain people that are attracted to you because of the sort of energy you give off, whatever the vibe, just the way you act, and the way you look, the way you sound, and so forth. But for me, really, I'd say my first love, really, of anything in life would have been my parents and my siblings, in that way of family love, obviously, but as I got into my later part of my childhood, I started to, just as kids do, you start exploring, and you start to become aware of your sexuality, slowly but surely. But it wasn't really until I was into my mid-teens that I knew, like, 100% that I was attracted to females. I did go for, like I said before, a bit of a weird phase where I was kind of questioning myself for a while for some for some weird reasons. I don't quite know what triggered all that, to be really, if I'm honest. But by the time I was about sort of 8, 9, 10-ish, I was, actually it was before that, I think it was when I was about sort of 7 or 8, I started to become like I found, like there was a girl called Stacey I quite liked. I've probably mentioned all of these names before in another video on YouTube, or certainly on Facebook Live anyway. First it was I think the very first girl that I ever really liked at primary school would have been, I think anyway from what I can remember, Stacey. I can't remember the actual grade, but what year I was in, but I can't remember exactly, but I was probably about, I'm guessing 6 or 7 or something like that. And I think after Stacey, it was like Laura. There was a girl called Laura. I'm not going to mention their surnames because that wouldn't be right. There was a girl called Laura that I was attracted to for a period of time. God knows why. Mind is a strange thing, especially when you're a child. And then it flipped between people. Like there was a girl called Rebecca, another girl called Stephanie, and I was. It's really weird when you look back at it's like, I'm sure they probably look back sometimes and think, God, why did I like him? Why did I like her? I don't know. When you're a kid, it's things just kind of like, things kind of just happen naturally. It's like I didn't like, it wasn't like a conscious. I don't think it was really like a conscious thing. I was thinking about. It was just kind of like it was just kids learning about themselves as they went along, and obviously sexuality is a part of that process. So that, that sort of got me into a lot of problems, especially with the case of Laura, with her father basically threatening me at one point. But we won't go into that. Should be in prison really for what it is. But anyway, yeah. So I was kind of. I sort of flipped from people over time, and I think Stephanie was probably the girl that I was like most attracted to, probably like for the longest in terms of primary school, I think. But there was a lot of girls that I was attracted to be honest with you, and that's probably because I wasn't a very good looking kid. So I don't know. I was attracted to Stephanie, Annie, I think, even at one point. God knows why. Alexander Galat, I shouldn't have said her name, but yeah, Alexander. Kevin, you know what I'm talking about. My brother, that is. There was a lot of girls that I was really attracted to. Well, I say attracted to, not in the sense of I'm attracted to a woman, a female now, obviously, but yeah, I sort of flipped through people, probably like even maybe like Chantel at one point, and there was did I mention Becky? I think I did. There was actually another Steph. I think her name was Stephanie. One of my friends, Raymond, at the time. I think he ended up getting with her at a certain point. Anyway, it flipped. It sort of, I was just going from one phase to another phase, as you do when you're a kid, and I always remember like the excitement of like I remember like sneaking out of class one day when I think it was Miss Robinson's class at Allfleet Primary School, and I can't remember what the lesson was. It might have been science or something, and I think Stephanie went to the toilet, and this must have been when we was about 10 or 11. I'm thinking now. I think it was, because I remember it was a bit taller, and I think it might have been 2001 actually, or 2010 or 11 years old, whatever. So just about on the verge of becoming a teenager, basically. So obviously that played a part in it. And I remember just like sneaking out. I don't know if I went to first, and I don't know if we both talked about it, and we both sort of went out of class, and I think we sort of met up in the toilets or something ridiculous. You know, we just thought we were being so rebellious, and I don't know if we kissed in the toilet or something. It's all a bit cringy and a bit kind of weird and embarrassing, but we were just kids, but it was fun at the time. You know, it was adventurous. It was, it was freedom in a way. You know, it was a break from the monotonous nature of school rules and the authority and kind of saying fuck you to authority and that kind of thing, and Stephanie, I remember going to her house. I don't know if I went a few times, and we was like snogging away and things like this, and that must have been when we was about 12, I think probably about 12 or 13, 12 maybe. And then we went our own ways, I guess, obviously at a certain point, because I'm sorry if that gets really loud in a minute, because we're in the rainy season here in Thailand, and I think it's going to rain pretty heavily in a moment. So I do apologise if it gets quite loud, because I'm sat next to the kitchen and the roof's pretty. It's not the best roof, let's put it that way, and it's pretty noisy. So I do apologise if it makes a lot of noise. But yeah, Stephanie, I was quite attracted to Stephanie. It wasn't so much her looks that I was attracted to. It was her personality. Like, I quite liked a kind of like playful, sort of like teasing sort of like nature kind of thing. It was like, it was nature playing itself out kind of thing, I guess. Kids will be kids, teenagers will be teenagers. You know how it goes, and I think I don't know. It was one of those puppy love kind of, we were kids basically, at the time. Let's face it. So yeah, that went on, and for whatever reason, that probably because we just both ended up going to different schools, that basically stopped at a certain point, or I just stopped liking her for some reason, or whatever it was. I can't remember exactly, or it might be just because of the way she lived, and I honestly can't remember now. We lived not that far away from each other at the time, in 2002 or 3, whatever it was. And anyway, so we move on now to 2004ish or 5ish or something, and that's when I started to become attracted to a girl called Rebecca. Roberta. At a certain point, I think that might have been 2005, and that was after I was really madly, for the first time, I suppose, really in my life, what I felt at the time was love. So I was probably 14, 15 years old. There was a girl called Rebecca. And also I should mention, there was a girl that I actually met when I went to Swaffham in Norfolk when I was 10. Her name was Alana. I still speak to her, actually. After a lot of years, we didn't speak, because we only met once. But I really liked her. I really liked her when I met her and saw her for the first time. And we walked. I don't know, just the memory of us walking across this little stream together and things. It's just always stuck in my mind. And I don't know. I just always felt she was a special person for some reason. I don't know. I just never could get it out of my head. And I'm gonna get onto the trappings and the problems of loving it in just a moment, but I thought it was interesting to and useful to provide some background. Well, just give me a moment. I think my dogs are hearing the wind blowing. So, yeah, I became a teenager, and that's when I think, really, when I started to become much more interested in the physical aspects of girls, as in, you know, their bodies, basically, I suppose. Or I was more attracted to girls physically by the time I was probably about 12, 13 years old, I think, somewhere around there. Certainly by the time I was 14, 15, I was obviously, I started, and it's a difficult thing to talk about, but I think it is relevant to this video, and I've mentioned it before, is pornography. And let's face it, we all watch it, we all engage in it, so let's get that out of the way. Let's not be embarrassed about it, it's just a part of human nature. You know, I'd begun essentially watching pornography by the time I was about, I think, probably 11 or 12 years old, because of magazines my brother used to have, and you know, just eventually, just naturally, kind of, it's just something that just creeps into your life, and before you know it, the rain starts. Before you know it, you know, you just become more and more physically attracted to, or I did. A lot of people do. Whatever it is that you're sexually attracted to. And for me, that was women. That was girls. You know, at the time. So. Yeah, 15 came around. That's when I guess my hormones were kind of at the peak, I guess, in many respects. And that's when I kind of, I'd say for the very first time in my life, really, that's when I became really properly physically attracted to females, because I remember Becky, a girl called Becky, she was very attractive at the time. She's still attractive now, actually, even though she's been through a lot, put her body through a lot, unfortunately, but that's a whole other situation which I've got no right to talk about. So, but yeah, so, you know, by the time I was in my mid-teens, I was kind of going through the hormones and all of that kind of crazy period, and that's when I first, I guess, really became attached and became maybe a little bit obsessive, to be honest. And I don't know, it was a difficult age. It was a difficult time in my life in many respects, and probably shouldn't have pushed. I mean, the thing is, that situation with Rebecca actually started through. I remember seeing her at school with another guy, Sean, and I don't want to go into all of that, but basically I ended up having a dream, and that dream basically sort of like inspired me to write a letter. It's all a bit kind of cringy now, but I was trying to be romantic in my, messed up teenage brain, and so I gave it to my friend Paul, and I think he passed it on to her, from what I recall anyway. And eventually I was a bit of a bully, to be honest, and I do regret in some way. I shouldn't have been a bully to Sean. I probably shouldn't have pursued some. When I think about all of those people, really, upon reflection, I probably wish I had. I kind of sometimes wish I hadn't. I wish I'd have just focused on my studies and got on at school and tried to get better grades. But that side of your brain, the primitive, I guess, part of your brain just sort of takes over, especially when you're young and you don't know how to. You don't have the mechanisms quite yet. You don't have the maturity to deal with yourself properly, really, and you're still learning, obviously. But in another way, I don't regret it, because I'm glad that I met those people. Every one of them, I'm glad that I met them, even though most 99% of them I didn't ever have a relationship with. I never got the chance to have any kind of connection with them or anything, really. But that's the way it goes. That's life, and it does. Sometimes it upsets me, and this is what I get to love here and now, really, is that through all of those years of falling for people and kind of becoming a bit obsessed with girls and things, it did have an impact on me. I think it's not really anybody else's fault, to be honest. It was just one of those, it was just, I didn't know any better, and I don't know, I think I've just always kind of been a bit of a hopeless romantic, really. I think I tried my best, but I think sometimes I came on a bit strong. Just give me a moment. I'm sorry about that. The wind keeps blowing the gate around and it's disturbing me. This is probably one of the most unprofessional videos I've done yet. I didn't realise it was going to rain this soon. And I saw the storm coming, but I didn't realise it was going to arrive this quickly. So it's obviously travelling a lot faster than I thought. A bit like my age. I didn't think I was going to reach 34 as quickly as I have, but hey ho, that's life. So I think really deep down I've made a lot of mistakes with regards to love, and past 15 I didn't really. I suppose Rebecca was really really. Actually, come to think of it, I think honestly Alana, the girl I met when I was 10, I think that was the first time I ever kind of properly felt anything for anybody. But it wasn't until later on that I kind of realised that. But certainly when I got involved with Rebecca for a period of time, which wasn't very long, I think it was a few months, maybe 6 months, maybe a year or something, I can't remember. I was madly, I genuinely believe that, and I'll say it to my dying day, that I was madly in love with her. As a teenager, that is. Let's put it into perspective. But I do, and even now, I do believe that I was in love with the girl. But she wasn't in love with me, and there was all sorts of things going on that I didn't know about. But the only positive is that I was a kid, and there weren't any real consequences of it in the end, and I suppose in the end everything kind of worked out to some extent for both of us, and we both went our own ways and had our own lives, but of course there's always those what ifs in the back of your mind, and could I have done more? Should I have done more? Did I do things the right way? Probably not. Could I have done something to have helped her so she didn't go down the route that she went down? Not that I have to be the white, the white saviour, or the knight in shining armour or something for every girl that I meet or something. But I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like I was robbed of chances sometimes in life. I feel like I was robbed of the chance to prove myself, but I probably wasn't brave enough. I didn't do enough. I didn't say enough sometimes, and I kind of regret that. But at the same time, maybe it was just meant to be. It wasn't meant to be. It just fate. I guess maybe fate is just what it is, and that's it. So yeah, as I got in a later part of my teens, I wasn't particularly interested in anybody really. Not until I was 19, 20, I think it was. 20, I think. When I was kind of attracted to a girl called Shauna for a very short period of time. That didn't come to anything. I met my ex-partner, Helena, or Helena, whatever you want to call her. That's not my full name, but I'm not going to give that. But she knows who she is, and those who know me know who I'm talking about. Made a massive impact on me and influenced me in many respects. I'm glad that I met her in many ways, but also in many respects, indirectly, she kind of, in some ways, was a kind of a bit of a bad influence on me in certain ways, and kind of robbed me of my 20s, in 20s in certain ways, but that was my own fault for getting involved with her. And it's not really her fault. I should have known better. And to be fair, I mean, she should have known better as well at the time. But we all make mistakes. Nobody's perfect, so we've got to let things go, I guess, at a certain point. And then I met my wife, and the rest is history, basically. But I think love it can become a all-encompassing thing. Sorry about the loud brain sounds. And if you're not careful, it consumes you. It can ruin. I think it's something that we all want, but sometimes we don't know how to handle it when we get it. We can't handle it. We don't know what to do with it. And sometimes we become obsessive because of it. It can really bring out the very best in us as individuals, but it can also bring us to the very worst of ourselves as well. And I think, honestly, in my case, it was a bit of both of that. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I was perfect and do anything wrong. And when I was a kid or teenager, as an adult, because I have done things, I have said things and done things wrong, and I have regrets about those things. And sometimes I do sit up at night and think about certain things, and how could I have changed things? Could I have done things better and differently and so forth, like I said. But this is life. I'm going to come to an end in a few minutes. So love is a wonderful thing. It's nice to have someone that can bring you stability and provide you with a sense of belonging and intimacy and comfort, but it can also be a trap, because it can take years away from your life, and sometimes you don't realise that until you're looking at, you wake up in the morning one day, you look in the mirror and you think, I don't love this person anymore, I don't like this person anymore, and I don't like the person that I see in the mirror anymore either. And that realisation dawns on you and it plays on your mind, because you realise how much time's gone and how much time you've wasted. And that's not necessarily... You can love somebody, but it doesn't always work out, and it doesn't always, just because you love someone doesn't mean that you have to be with them forever. And I think there's a lot of people out there, a lot of men and women, trapped in relationships, marriages, situationships, whatever, friends with benefits, situations, that I think deep down are regretting what they're doing and regretting what they've done. I wouldn't say that I can't say that I don't love my wife, but sometimes I do wonder whether I've made the right choice. When I look back at my life could have gone very differently in both ways. It could have turned out in a lot better ways, a lot worse ways. So I obviously have no idea how things would have panned out if I'd have taken a different route. But it is what it is, and I've tried to make the best of it. I've said what I needed to say to the people that I needed to say things to. They know how I feel, they know what I think. And I've said my bit, and I've tried to make peace with them, and make peace with myself. But just be careful. Just be careful with love, because it can be a double-edged sword. Don't let your emotions control everything, like I did for a long time. And wasted a lot of the best years of my life away. Because I was lonely and depressed. You deserve better than that for yourself. I deserve better than that for myself. Don't let loneliness dictate to you and lead you to people that aren't right for you. They might care about you, they might love you, but they probably aren't right for you. And in the end, in the long term, you're going to be very unhappy. And I've seen it with my parents. You see it with people that have been together a very long time, and how the resentment creeps up, and the hostility and the passive aggressiveness and all this kind of thing, and the toxicity that relationships can become. Love is a great thing, don't get me wrong. It's a wonderful thing to have. And I'm thankful to the people that I got to share at different levels, the different stages of my life with, in different aspects of love, or love, whatever you want to call it. But I made some mistakes, and I admit that now. And it's okay to make mistakes, but just own up to them. Let love inspire you and push you to do better things and become a better person, not to become a shadow of your former self.